There are some unexpected teams in the NFL right now that are 3-0, and that's our settling for 3 this week. Or we're gonna settle on 3 teams to talk about to open the show up. I mean, I get it. Kansas City, Buffalo, we kind of expected them to be good,
Yeah.
so we're not gonna talk about them. The 3
I don't think
surprise
we need to talk about Kansas City till January.
no, the 3 surprise 3-0 teams are Seattle, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
If you had told me a month ago that those teams would be 3-0, I would have been very surprised. If you watched our team previews and a month ago, I was pretty low on all of them, I
I
believe.
think we picked them all nearly to be last place teams.
Very unlikely. It's still possible, but I would almost bet against it. I mean, we'll start with Pittsburgh. I think my number one takeaway automatically in this, and I'll tie in the whole division here with this conversation. Like Cincinnati is screwed.
Oh, yeah.
They're 3 games back already.
Done.
We're like a month into the season. So I'll ask you, and you're very familiar with the Pittsburgh starting quarterback, Justin Fields. Is this a team that you realistically think contends for the AFC?
Not contends for the AFC. They're certainly they're certainly setting themselves up for a good chance to win the division right now. So that's good for them. Their defense is absolutely unreal at the moment. They have only allowed 26 points. They're second in yards per carry allowed. They're ninth in net yards per attempt allowed in pass for passing game. So I mean they have as dominant of a defense as we've seen. I mean, 3 games is small sample size, but a dominant defense. The offense, though, of course, is ironically, yes, I do know the quarterback quite well. Not personally, but they haven't had to do a lot on offense, which is good for them. But they have 3 touchdowns through 3 weeks.
That's not sustainable for
it's not
winning.
Sustainable. But with Justin Fields, it's actually a very similar offense to what actually Cliff Kingsbury is running with Jaden Daniels right now. They're not asking him to do a lot, which is probably good for him right now because it's settling him in. I do think it's still telling that, I know there's some Justin Fields stands out there, and good for him that he's off to a 3-0 start this year. I'm happy for him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But I do think it is interesting that Mike Tomlin still hasn't, it's not like he hasn't said like, we're going to roll with Justin. They'll probably roll with him until the wheels come off, but see with Justin, they could come off any week. And so I think they'll turn to Russell when that happens, and assuming Russell's healthy too.
Yeah. And I think Tomlin's right to do that. I think anybody that watch these 3 Pittsburgh games, I mean, the thing that stands out to you is how good they've been defensively. I mean,
yes,
through the first 3 weeks of the season, they haven't given up more than 10 points. I mean, that's pretty incredible by itself. The one thing I'll say about Pittsburgh, I agree that not really a Super Bowl contender, but I mean, I think the path to 10 wins is pretty much there.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically,
play 500 out.
I think this team in their first 8 games is realistically going to be like 7-1. The next 6 weeks, here are their games. At Indianapolis, I mean, the way Anthony Richardson's been playing,
terrible.
I think that's a really good chance for them to be 4-0. They get Dallas at home, and I think that's a winnable game. At the Raiders, who just lost to arguably the worst team in the NFL last week at home.
Another terrible offense.
They got blown out. The Jets at home, that's a tougher team right now. They got Rodgers, but it's at home. And both of those Cowboys and Jets games are on Sunday night, by the way. Giants at home, at Commanders.
It's weird to have 2 Sunday night games in 3 weeks in the same stadium.
So that's your next 6 games.
Yeah.
Realistically, that's of your first 9 games, I think this team could come out like 7-2, maybe even 8-1.
They have a very much like Chicago Bears schedule where their first divisional game is also week 11.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird that two teams have a schedule like that this year.
Yeah, and the key thing for them is to keep stacking wins.
Yes.
Second half of their schedule, Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, 4 straight weeks of AFC North games. Then they get the Eagles
on the road.
And then the Ravens on the road, Chiefs and Bengals to finish up at home. So that's a much tougher,
November,
that's a much
December.
tougher road. But the key thing for them, like I said, is if they're starting 7-1, maybe even 8-1, it might not even matter. Like you might be getting the Bengals where like they just shut Joe Burrow down at the end of the year.
Yeah,
they're done. Like that could be, or if the Browns, for example, if they continue faltering with Deshaun Watson, like their season falls apart, like maybe there's a lot. I think the Steelers, to me, feel like a team that is going to just win way more than we expect, and then like they're going to lose in the wild card round. And but I still will congratulate them if they do that, because
that's a wildly successful year for them.
Yeah, that's way more than
not be expected.
Yeah. So moving on to the next team, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Is this team a contender to win the NFC?
No.
I disagree. I actually think they might be. And here's why. If you look through the first 3 games of the season for them, I mean, just last week, they blew out a quality team, I think, in the Texans. I mean, it wasn't just a casual win or like a close game, right? They beat the snot out of them. I mean, they beat them 34-7. They beat San Francisco at home last week. And they still had everybody out there minus Christian McCaffrey, right? So they still had Bosa. They still had Kittle was out there in that game. You had Deebo Samuel was out there. Like they were relatively healthy in week 2, and they beat a healthy Niners team. The Giants, what's kind of weird about the Giants is like, yeah, we made fun of them after week 1, but like probably should have beaten the Commanders, who look probably better than we think they are. Than we think they were. I guess they are better than we thought they would be, and but they blew the Giants out. I think that this team looks like a quality team, and the reason I say that they're an NFC contender is, and it's more of a point I have to make about the NFC. I think there's like a power vacuum right now. I don't see a single really juggernaut team in the entire conference. I think Detroit has shown a lot of vulnerabilities. I don't think Jared Goff's playing very well.
No.
San Francisco obviously has a ton of injuries, and they look like they might be having some type of hangover here. The Rams don't look like a quality team. They've been hurt. We talk in the NFC South. I mean, Tampa, are they great? Probably not. The Eagles, to me, look like I thought they were about to fire Sirianni after that game if they had lost that game. And Dallas has a lot of holes. Green Bay has an injured quarterback. Who knows what happens with him if he's fully healthy the entire season? I mean, Minnesota might. I think they have I think they might be a contender in the NFC. Like, it's weird to say that. I wouldn't have said that last year, but I think they are for real. I like the way their defense is playing too. I mean, 2 blowout wins and then a quality win at home against a great team in San Francisco. I think this team's for real.
No, they are definitely a lot better than I thought they were. I think some people do get sucked in sometimes to the early season, rise of some teams. It's I think I brought this up to you one time years ago before, how it's funny how some teams, their biggest games are like, depending on the month of the year, Kansas City, their biggest games, of course, are always in January. Like Green Bay, they're hoping for January this year, but probably December, January, we'll say. Yep. A team like the Bears, maybe around November. Like Minnesota, their biggest games are, as we know of right now, are happening right now in October. And these are like the prove it months of the year. But who knows? It's because it's always funny. Like and I think this is the reason why I said it to you. It's funny when you look back on it and you're like, man, that felt like such a big game. But in the grand scheme of things, it was like, oh, that was just a normal Sunday. Now, I'm not trying to cut down the Vikings because they have had an incredible start to the season. I do wonder how I think their defense right now is playing way above their talent level. I think Brian Flores is showing how amazing of a coordinator he is. He's getting a lot out of a defense that doesn't have that much talent. He's a great schemer in that way. And of course, we haven't seen Sam Darnold put it together for a full 17 games yet.
That is a fair case to make because Sam Darnold has been through this before. Back in 2021, the Panthers were 3-0, and it all fell apart once a couple of star players got hurt.
Exactly. But I think what is going to help the Vikings at this point, I talked about Brian Flores. Kevin O'Connell is an amazing head coach. That's a better head coach than, well, obviously he played with Shanahan last year, but he wasn't the starter. It's a better head coach than Darnold has had when he's been the starter.
Correct.
So I think it probably, like, he probably comes back down to earth a little bit, but I don't think he probably doesn't look nearly as bad as he has in years past for the rest of the season. I mean, they're definitely a team, again, if they can stack their wins now, we'll see where they are in November, December. They're definitely a team that you would consider in the hunt. They're going to be in the hunt for a while at this point.
Huge month ahead for the Vikings. They get at Green Bay this weekend. Whoever wins that game arguably might be in the driver's seat in the NFC North along with Detroit. Whoever loses that game, I think, is probably going to have to settle for a wild card, it looks like. The Jet, I mean, that's too early to say necessarily, but I mean, they won't have the driver's seat to the division, to say the least. The Jets the following week, Lions at Rams. So I think this is kind of a prove it month, but I'm a believer. I mean, normally if they had beaten like 3 bad teams, like if it kind of what the Chargers did to start off the season, like they beat the Raiders and they beat the Panthers, right? Not 2 impressive wins by any means. I'd be a little more skeptical, but I mean, I can't ignore the fact that they just beat the piss out of the Texans. It wasn't even close. Like, and the Texans are, a lot of people like thought they would be in contention for the AFC. I'm with you. I want to see it from Darnold, but this NFC is wide open, and it's kind of a show me year. Like, I'm going to believe in anybody if they show it to me because there's been a lot of bad football overall.
Oh yeah,
and this transitions to the last team before we go into the game previews. What do you think of the Seahawks? Because I don't like the schedule they've played. I don't see a quality win in the first 3 games, but they've won 2 of them were at home that they were convincing wins, in my opinion. And they have star power. What do we make of this team? Are they contenders to win the NFC West? Do you think like San Francisco should be worried about them?
Well, their defense is far improved this year compared to where last year. Like they were one of the league's worst defenses last year.
But look at the team. Look at the quarterbacks you've played against.
Yeah,
Jacoby Brissett, and then
so that also helps. Of the 3 teams we talked about, they're the team I'd probably believe in the least in terms of their playoff standing.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, and they're a team too. Like I don't think San Francisco is worried about them because I don't think San Francisco, it wasn't last year that San Francisco started like 3-3, right? I think it was the year before or something where
it was in 21. They weren't that great to start the season.
Yes. And they still, they figured it out by the end.
They got the wild card and then they went on to lose in LA, I think that year.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's kind of, I think that's going to be kind of what happens here in the NFC West. I think San Francisco gets their footing later on in the year. I do like Geno Smith in terms of just how he operates and he's a great example for teams that think that, or for quarterbacks that we think of are oh, they're done, or like that this guy doesn't have it. He learned a lot as a backup. Actually, Shane Waldron, believe it or not, was the guy who kind of got him going. And he's kind of kept that going. I know he's only got 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions this year. So a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio doesn't sound good, but he does have a 49.5 point success rate. So
yeah,
he's actually been better than those numbers suggest.
He reminds me a little bit of like Kerry Collins.
Yeah.
Like that kind of career arc, like pretty disappointing. Kerry Collins had at least a year where he got to the NFC Championship early in his career.
Yeah.
And
then he took the Titans. Well, even though it wasn't really him that did it that year, but yeah.
But it's hard to find a comparison because like the Geno Smith career arc is very unusual. Normally, quality quarterbacks like never lose their job.
Yeah.
What's funny is Sam Darnold might actually be
maybe a Jim Plunkett type of career arc.
Yeah. Well, how wild would it be though in a world where the Seahawks and the Vikings play like a divisional playoff game and it's Geno Smith against Sam Darnold?
Wow.
The Jets fans would just be like, we really were that.
And Giants fans, technically, because Geno Smith was with the Giants too for a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the Jets fans, like, because it's like they went from Geno
to
Darnold, and they both failed and were considered busts, and then it kind of like comes full circle all over again 10 years later. And but I agree with you. I think I don't want to call Seattle frauds because I think good football teams win games like that.
Yeah, they find ways to win.
And I've been impressed, especially like the defense. I've seen Joe Barry give up like big games to Skylar Thompson or like those kind of quarterbacks. Like Bryce Young had his best career day last year against us. So I know what bad defense looks like. Seattle definitely doesn't have a bad defense by any means. I do want to say though, I think it's a little bit of a facade that they are just going to be like this shutdown defense the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so interesting to watch over the next really 5 weeks. They're at Detroit, which is really going to be a tough game. But it could also be a prove-it game. Like they could come out and make a statement. Giants,
time to do it?
They get the Giants, so they get to kind of go back to a below average quarterback. 49ers at home at the Falcons, who I think might be humming at that point. Maybe Kirk Cousins kind of finally settles in by late October. Then they get the Bills, Rams, and 49ers. So, and then the Cardinals. So there's a lot of higher quality offenses kind of later this year. Waiting for them. They're not going to have the Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, Skylar Thompson open. It's probably not going to get any easier from here, to be honest. So that's one thing I'm very interested to kind of see with the Seahawks. But with that, any other thoughts on the 3-0 teams before we go into the games?
No, I guess, we were wrong. So if anybody comes to us for their football knowledge.
No. Well, and that's the last point I want to make too, by the way. Handicapping like teams at the beginning of the season is so hard. Because, for example, like I would have had Miami as a tough game for them. But, I mean, who would have thought Tua goes down week 2?
Yeah,
with a concussion.
There are like a blowout win for Miami if you 6 weeks ago.
Absolutely, and I mean, and think about it. Like there are some quality team, or at least we thought quality rosters that are 0-3. Look at Cincinnati. I was higher on Jacksonville, and they look like the worst team in the NFL right now. There's so much.
Miami has the worst DVOA.
Yeah. And I think too, like with these guys, they're human beings. Like they have up and downs just like we all do.
Yeah.
And it's, they're not robots, so they're hard to predict. And I think at least I take pride in the fact that we definitely admit all the time when we're wrong. We have strong opinions, but we're willing to change them based off of the information that we get, which is what we watch on Sundays. So first game of the weekend, Cowboys Giants. And I'm going to frame it this way for you. This game, to me, is Dallas is in trouble kind of game. Dallas is a 5.5 point favorite. but they're on the road, and I think the Giants have actually kind of played sneaky well for the last 2 weeks. They were horrible in their opener. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But, they outplayed Washington. They should have won that game. And I actually think Daniel Jones and the offense played pretty well against Cleveland. And their defense actually kind of stepped it up last week with Deshaun Watson. And they didn't give up a touchdown in week 2. The Cowboys, to me, have had, they're not the same team defensively that they were last year.
Yeah.
They cannot run the ball. This is on the road. What do you think? I cannot get my head. I don't think the Giants are good, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think Dallas I think this is going to be a tougher game than 5.5 points. I think that's basically a touchdown. What Vegas thinks that they're a touchdown better. That's a lot to me. I see Dallas winning this game, but I think it's going to be a struggle for them. And I don't think Cowboy fans will be happy after this game, but they'll win the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. No, Dallas has been very, very disappointing. They, as you said, they can't run the ball. They also can't stop the run.
No.
They're probably the league's worst defense at stopping the run right now.
It reminds me of an old McCarthy team back like 10 years ago.
Yeah, you've seen it before.
You're putting a lot of pressure on your quarterback. But to me, like the thing that changed with McCarthy when he was like, I thought he was actually a better coach when he got to Dallas because,
you thought he learned
just a couple years. Well, I don't even know if it's his fault though. Like, I don't think they can run the ball because they don't have any explosive players. Like, I mean, you got Zeke Elliott running back there. He dude's toast. Like Rico Dowdle, God bless him, South Carolina player, but
yeah.
He's not an all-world talent. Like I think they needed a guy like Pollard. They need some explosiveness in their offense on the ground game to make things easier for Dak. Like Dak Prescott's not necessarily a guy I want throwing it 40.
Well, it feels like the 2020 season for Dallas.
Yeah. Like I think Dak is going to put up a big number season.
Yes. Yeah, but he's going to have to. At this rate,
that doesn't bode well for this team. They're not built to win like that.
They've never won like that with Dak. They've always run or worked well when they have at least a formidable ground attack.
I mean, I think that goes all the way back to like the 90s teams.
Yes,
I mean,
yes. It's just the Dallas marquee, basically.
Name the best Dallas team when they had Tony Romo.
When they had DeMarco Murray at running back. Yeah, 2014.
Yep. And DeMarco Murray, like he could run the ball, he could create big plays in the ground game. And then of course, like they had a deep passing game with Dez Bryant. And Romo could make plays just like Dak can. I mean, CeeDee Lamb makes a lot of big plays. But to me, like there's just something missing offensively. The one thing, at least for Dallas's defense, is for their unit, this is probably the one team I think they match up pretty well against. I don't see the Giants as a team that can really threaten them on the ground.
Yeah.
I am curious to see if Malik Neighbors continues to be, I mean, he's been actually pretty ridiculous through the start of the year.
He's like 5th in receiving yards right now.
Do you remember my take that it was like, if a quarterback doesn't win Rookie of the Year, it's going to be Malik Neighbors?
I do believe you saying that. Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about that. So through the first 3 weeks of the season, 23 touchdowns, 271 yards,
23 catches,
23 catches,
yeah,
271 yards, 3 touchdowns. All 3 of those are top 5 in the league. So he's basically already a top 5 wide receiver, and he's an early stage rookie. He's just been absolutely incredible. I'll be curious to watch him then. But like I said, I'm kind of, I think we're both on the same page. We have Dallas winning, but I have Dallas taking it like 20-17.
Yeah, very similar to me. I have Dallas 23-20. It's not going to be pretty.
I think Daniel Jones will give him the game. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Jones is going to slip and fall and like fumble the ball, like or something stupid. And like Dallas will not feel like I think New York will outplay Dallas, but Dallas will win. Is how I think the outcome of this game goes.
And if they don't,
Yeah. Oh, if they don't, if New York wins this game, there's a big conversation to have on Friday.
McCarthy might be on the hottest seat in football then.
Yeah, don't. I'll people turn on First Take the next morning. Saints, Falcons. Saints came crashing down to earth as soon as we all started joking. I think Bill Simmons was the one that said this could be like the 99 Rams. And I was like, I saw that and I'm like, maybe. I was like, Rashid Shaheed does remind me of Azakim.
Yeah.
I will give you that. I see the comparison there. And Kamara.
Maybe Falk,
but like Kamara is kind of dusty now compared. Like maybe Kamara 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about that. And then like, I love Chris Olave. He's a good player, but he ain't Isaac Bruce or Torrey.
No.
So, and then Derek Carr, I don't think he's Kurt Warner.
Yeah,
either.
they're poor man's 99.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the thing about the Saints early in the year is the rest of the league was so bad offensively. People were like, "This team's outstanding" because they're the only team that was like putting up points.
Yeah.
In the first few weeks. With that, they came crashing down to earth offensively last week. Philadelphia just shut them down. This is kind of like two opposite teams converging. So the Falcons, like to me, have played a lot better defensively than I thought they would be.
Mm-hmm.
But their offense has been underwhelming. So I believe more in Atlanta than in terms of like where everybody, like I guess against consensus, than I do the Saints. So I think Atlanta's going to win this game because they have to have it.
Yeah.
And I feel like the one thing I go back to that Philly game is like when their backs up against the wall, I actually kind of like them. I don't know, like I feel like if the Falcons do not win this game, though, I think there's going to be you're going to start hearing people ask for Michael Penix.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah, no, it's this does feel like a game that Atlanta wins. Sometimes you get a team like New Orleans that gets out to that hot start, and then just as quickly as they get out to that hot start, they come back down to earth, and everyone's like, "Woof, geez, that was quick. How did that happen so fast?" Did you see the thing that New Orleans didn't have like a murder for like 10 days?
Yeah, and I saw the Derek Carr's Jesus like meme.
Yeah, and then as soon as the Saints lost, like the next day there was a murder.
Yeah. Dude, and I'll tell you, like New Orleans, that's like New Orleans is going that long, like the city of New Orleans going that long without a murder is insane.
Derek Carr did it to them.
Like if you look at like crime statistics, not to be that podcast, but like like New Orleans is usually like in the top 5.
Yeah.
Like they're like the Alabama of crime statistics. And we could say LSU for location. But like New Orleans, like the fact that happened is pretty crazy. And like I'm curious, like somebody ought to do a study and see like if an NFL team
go down if the NFL team is winning.
Yeah, and you can
like I'd like to see
gang violence in Chicago. People always talk about gang violence in Chicago. It's like maybe that's actually the White Sox. It
probably is the Sox fault.
Jerry Reinsdorf is apparently responsible for all crime in Chicago. This dates back to Michael Jordan, and but anyway, I think the funny thing about the Saints and the way they laid an egg is, and I was wrong about this. I was starting to buy into the Saints hype because they looked so damn good in the first 2 weeks. And I was like, we should have known. This is what Derek Carr does. Like when we finally start like maybe buying in, like, oh man, maybe he turned a corner. No, he's still the same guy. They put up, how many points did they put up last week? It was like 9, right?
12, 15-12 was the final.
12 points at home against a defense that I don't think is that good. Like I don't look at Philly's defense and go like, you can't move the ball in them. Green Bay did it just fine. I think this game to me is, I think whoever wins this game, I think their season will go in a trajectory they want, and the loser will go the opposite. I think the loser will fade into mediocrity, where I think we were both kind of expecting them. That's why I'm going with the Falcons here, though. I'm going to take the Falcons in a low-scoring 20-17 game.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take Atlanta by a touchdown. I'm actually gonna take about 28-21.
Yeah.
Um,
The one thing about Atlanta I do not like is they are not explosive. Every drive is drawn out and long. They need something else. Like
yeah,
Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan are big names, right? All top 10 picks, but none of them are like this team needs a Rashid Shaheed kind of guy.
yeah.
Like they don't have any type of threat that opens up the offense.
Could be
And
Darnell Mooney.
it could be, but he hadn't been the guy yet. Like and
No, he
like
hasn't.
and to those guys and to maybe Darnell Mooney's defense, like he can't really maybe unlock it because Cousins can't really buy time in the pocket. Like they're probably trying to get the ball out quickly for him because he's not moving.
Mhm.
That the Falcons are gonna have to get that figured out. I think if they want to be a real like sustainable winner this year, because they had a chance to win that game, but like every drive felt just like hard. Like they had to work hard and they can make plays. Like Drake London's a playmaker. Kyle Pitts is a playmaker, but like I need more. Like I need easier plays than what they've been giving. It's just it feels so drawn out. Every touchdown drive has to be 9 plays, and that's really hard to do in the NFL. But so we're both taking the Falcons to win this game.
Yes.
Next game. Oh boy. Two teams I think need this game badly.
Oh yeah.
I think this is a game where Chicago, if they can't run the ball against this team,
We said that last week too.
I don't. If they can't run the ball against the Rams, I don't know what they like. This front is one of probably the worst in the NFL. If you watch them, even last week, they didn't really stop the 49ers. Like the game just kind of bounced their way, effectively at the end, and they won the game. But Chicago, like to me, that's their problem. Like Caleb Williams is being asked to do way too much to facilitate the offense. It's kind of like it's like a better version of Jacksonville's offense if you watch them like side by side, where everything feels like it's the quarterback has to buy time, has to throw off platform, has to make a high difficulty throw, and you're not going to have a sustainable offense doing that. And the first thing I notice is like Roschon Johnson's a lot better than DeAndre Swift is.
Yeah, and so is Khalil Herbert.
The Bears need to figure that out quickly. Make the game easier for your rookie quarterback. If they do that, I think the Bears actually win this game. That being said, I think this game will come down to coaching. And I think the Rams are a lot better coached than the Bears are. So I'm going to take the Bears, or I'm going to take the Rams 24-17.
Yeah, very close to what I'm going to take the Rams 23-17. And I think I think the Bears really screwed up by not hiring Ben Johnson last year and firing Matt Eberflus. I think Ben Johnson is waiting for a job like this. I think that's why, they're lucky he didn't go anywhere else last year, but I think it's because he's waiting for this kind of a job to open up.
Or you get, Bobby Slowick's probably going to be out there
Bobby,
too.
Bobby Slowick, they had a chance that they could have called him in last year. Now, Eberflus, he's a great culture guy, as they say, and which I'll give it to him. He is a good culture guy. I think he's a good defensive coordinator, but also I think I might be able to coach that Bears defense. I mean, we thought the worst part of the defense was going to be their defensive line, and now their defensive line is playing well. So they're playing well at all 3 levels.
I think their defense is playing well.
Yes.
Like, that's not the issue. Their defense won them a game.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. Their defense is fine. Yeah. Shane Waldron, like I said, he wasn't great in Seattle, but he was good. He was a top 10. And I know, as I said this earlier this year, talking about the Bears, talking about the Seahawks, everybody hates their offensive coordinator. If you love your offensive coordinator, it's because he's about to get another job somewhere else. That's the reality of it. Unless your head coach is the one calling plays. So I know Seattle fans were not happy with him, but the numbers did suggest that he was pretty decent in Seattle. I don't know what is going on. I don't know. I know because they poured so much money into DeAndre Swift, they are overusing him. I think that money should have been used to get Lloyd Cushenberry to be so you could have a starting center. They haven't had a real starting center since Olin Kreutz. That's 13 years, 14 years actually. The speed option that they ran on 4th and goal the other day, my poor baby, my poor son, and my 2 dogs got so scared because I absolutely lost it. It was an egregious play call.
Yeah.
And then Matt Eberflus started saying this on Monday. He started talking about how, well, Caleb's number one job should be to protect the football. You cannot teach the aggressiveness out of another quarterback. You cannot teach the aggressiveness out of him.
And that's like his number one tribute.
Yes.
Or attribute.
Because the funny thing is when Caleb, when he started to settle in the other day, it was after the interception, the second interception. And actually the first interception was a terrible decision, but rookies do that.
You just let him play loose.
You let him play loose. The second interception, Odunze should have come down with the ball. It hit him straight in the hands. Now I know he threw it into double coverage, but the ball literally hit Odunze in the hands.
Yeah.
You got to come down with that. And Odunze he bounced back. He had a nice game. When they scored a touchdown to make it 14-9, how it wasn't communicated to the offense that if you score, stay on the field because we're going for 2. They had to burn a timeout. So then they were down to 2 timeouts. Then after the strip sack in Indianapolis was down at the 5-yard line, they were down at the 1 then. Eberflus calls a timeout with 5 minutes left. They're going to score. You need your timeouts. So they kicked off to Indianapolis. Indianapolis thankfully didn't run the ball out of the end zone, so it saved the Bears the 2-minute warning.
Yep. But
then the 2-minute warning came, timeout, and then first down, the game was over. Because the Bears this is to go back to the Houston game. He had 2 terrible challenges. He mismanaged. So I'm just worried that they could get Ben Johnson next year, and that would be great, but you wasted a year of Caleb's development.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating right now because I think there is talent there, and I think the team knows there's talent. I was actually pretty impressed with the way Caleb played for most of the game. He had the one bad decision, but I thought overall he played pretty well.
Caleb Williams is not this offense's problem.
No, I don't think so.
The way I look at this team, if you're going to place blame on something, I think there's probably, it would make the most sense, I think, is Poles and Eberflus, mostly because we talk about like good offenses and like where things are established and like where you make investments. Swift being basically the second highest paid running back in free agency, only behind Saquon, right? And
Josh Jacobs too.
But like Jacobs and Saquon are both like Saquon's like one of the most explosive offensive players in football. So like we're not even talking about him, but Jacobs is kind of like a between the tackles.
Yeah, he's your
traditional runner. What Swift does not bring, and I think why Philly was just okay letting him walk and going to get Saquon, is because he does not really run well between the tackles.
No.
And to me, that's like
the Bears can block well outside the tackles.
Like, even though like Detroit, for example, like you keep talking about Ben Johnson, like and Shane Waldron in Seattle. Typically, what I think they've done in those places and why they have success is because like they put an emphasis and like a big investment into the running game.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's something like DeAndre Swift has never been like a good producer in, is actually running the ball. Like his major strength is like getting open in space in the receiving game. And to me, like Caleb has enough receiving weapons. I mean, you spend a damn top 10 pick, you trade for Keenan Allen, you already have DJ Moore as part of the trade last year.
You're pretty happy with Cole Kmet.
But you didn't really invest a ton in the offensive line. I mean, you got a top 10 pick I guess in Darnell Wright last year. But to me, I think there needed to be more done up front, and then the overall fit offensively of what they need from one of their backs. I need a guy that's just good in pass protection and it's going to get me have a good success rate. And DeAndre Swift is not that guy.
Nope.
I think that's one of the big problems. I think if this team played Roschon Johnson or Khalil Herbert, really Roschon Johnson specifically, I think if they started playing him more, Caleb would have a lot more success, because the way I look at this Bears offense is y'all are playing with you're playing in so many situations where it's second and long, it's third and long. No quarterback's going to be successful.
Nope.
Like that. And the team you're playing against is a team that puts an emphasis on the run game, making their the life of the quarterback easier. And that's where, going to this game as a whole, that's why I'm taking the Rams. I think overall, I think Chicago probably has more talent.
Way more talent, but they are so undercoached. It doesn't matter.
Undercoached, and like, it goes to show you football is more than just building blocks.
Yeah, it's more than fantasy players.
Yeah, it's not just, hey, look at all these big names I got. It's building a roster and a team that is like with a purpose. And the Rams, like, I don't think have the talent, but like the guys they have, I think do their job well. And like Kyren Williams does not have the talent DeAndre Swift does, but Kyren Williams like does the little things right. And like you rarely see Kyren Williams, when he runs the ball, like lose yards.
Yeah.
Like, so Stafford's not always in a situation where he doesn't. I mean, Stafford's offensive line is probably worse than Caleb's right now, but Stafford's not playing in so many situations where it's 3rd and 10, right?
Yeah.
It's usually 3rd and 4. Those are a lot easier to convert. And I think that's where the Rams have the advantage. But what score did you have for this game?
Very close to you, 23-17 Rams.
Okay. And I said
24-17, you said.
24-17. Yeah, I just think the Rams are a better coach team, but these teams are pretty evenly in talent. Probably the early game of the week, I would say. Vikings, Green Bay. First question, does Jordan Love play in this game? I think that's the first question we have to answer.
Did he practice today?
Let me look. So he was a limited participant like all last week, but he did not go. Malik Willis, and I'd imagine he was still probably he was limited participant once again this week.
I'd say he will.
I think he will as well. I think when they beat the Colts, they knew he was not going to play against Tennessee, because I think they saw this game.
They could live without him playing against Tennessee.
Yeah, because it bought them time. The fact they beat Tennessee last week is like a luxury, because I think they were looking at the first 4 games of the season. Once he went down with the injury, they're like, if we can make it to week 5 at 2-2, that's a huge win. Now they might get him back. They get Minnesota at home. Minnesota's really good, though. So I think there's 2 ways we can answer this. If Malik Willis plays this game for Green Bay, I'm going to take the Vikings. I'm going to take them 30-20. I think this would be the game where I think the Malik Willis like story kind of
experiment.
He's done a great job, and I commend him for it. But I think they played 2 bad teams, in my opinion. This is a different animal. I'm taking the Vikings 30-20 if Malik Willis starts, but I think Jordan Love will play. And therefore, I'm going to take the Packers, actually, in a very close 27-24 game. I think the fact that this is at Lambeau, I think makes a major difference.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Green Bay 30-20. I'm gonna assume Love plays. I shouldn't assume, but I think he will. I think, yeah, if Malik Willis plays, I would probably take the Vikings.
Yeah.
But I think this is a big enough game. If the Vikings came in 1-2, or maybe even 2-1, and they scratched their way to 2 of those wins,
yeah,
it would be different. But I think the way the Vikings have played, I think the Packers will get Love suited up. I think he'll be all right. He'll be ready to go. I have a feeling this is going to be like one of those, I don't know, going back through the years and you think about like the AP Peterson team, the AP Viking teams, I should say, against Rodgers Packers teams. There was always a couple like shootouts.
they were emotional games, like where
Emotional games.
you
Yeah.
almost like if you don't win it, you're like
You were
pissed off.
draining. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
I
gonna
just
be.
feel like
I
it's gonna be
agree.
like one of those kind of games again. I think it's
Yeah,
gonna be a really good game.
I think there are gonna be a lot of swings in this where it'll be like, oh man, I think they got us, and like that could be like where Justin Jefferson gets a 40-yard touchdown, or Green Bay gets a long drive and something like that.
Mhm.
I think the key for the Packers, and this is kind of going forward, is I think they discovered something really well. This team is a smash mouth team. Like
Mhm.
they almost took like a page out of Jim Harbaugh. Like they run the damn ball. Like they are physical up front offensively. Like they were great defensively last week getting after the passer. I was very impressed with the way they've played the last 2 weeks. Uh they have to keep the mentality, even though if Love comes back, I don't want Love throwing the ball 50 times. I don't want that. I think Love would be like, I almost want them to have a similar game plan like they would have with Malik Willis in terms of like pushing teams around the way they did.
Mhm.
But when you do get a play action, like Jordan Love is going to make him pay with a big play
Yeah.
down the field. I that's my only worry about when Love comes back. Do they change up their philosophy? Because like whatever they did the last 2 weeks, like they were in control. Like they dominated both
Mhm.
games. Like I know they were against bad teams, but like what I said is like just imagine when they have a starting quarterback out there, like the big plays will start happening.
Yes.
So I think LaFleur deserves his flowers. I think this is the big test for them now. Can they apply that same smash mouth style now that their starting quarterback is presumably back? So I took Green Bay 27-24, and you have it as what?
30-27 Green Bay.
30-27. So I don't think we're different on anything yet.
No, not yet. We're actually our scores, as always, seem to be lining up.
Let's go quickly on this one because I don't have a ton to say. I think Anthony Richardson's not very good.
I think he's
Uh,
terrible.
I think he's a project. Maybe in 2 years he'll be something special, but he's got a long way to go. This is not a team I expect to play well against this defense.
Oh, Jesus. They
Um,
might score 10 points.
that's exactly where I'm going. 20-10.
To 2 weeks in a row, Pittsburgh 20-10. I'll say 24. I'll say 24-13. Maybe Fields gives them a short field one time and they get a field goal.
Yeah, and I'm thinking this would be a game Justin Fields has like 140 yards passing and they win. Like I think this will be the game I'm really planning on trying not to watch.
Yeah.
But I think the Steelers go 4-0.
Yeah.
Broncos Jets. So last week I finally gave up on the Broncos and damn it, like they were good. Like
Yeah.
how annoying is that? Like, so I defend the Broncos at the start of the season. They go out and play like crap the first 2 weeks. And then they just go to a 2-0 team in Tampa and just walk all over them.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jets looked really
This
good.
league.
The Jets looked really good last week. Like Rodgers, I think, was moving better. He was pretty accurate. He did have that little blow up with Saleh, which was interesting.
That was weird.
But
not
I think
unlike
that just comes with the territory. I wouldn't really read too much into it. I I think this is a sneaky game. What does Vegas say about this game? What do they have?
I'm about to open up right now. The Jets are in
Vegas.
London next week. 7.5 for the Jets.
That's a lot to me. I think if the Broncos, if whatever they figured out last week,
I kind of think the Jets are coming into their own right now, which is
yeah. I agree. I still think the Jets win by a touchdown, but I also think Bo Nix is starting to play better. One thing they figured out is like Bo Nix is a pretty good athlete, and I think they got him moving on the ground a little bit, and that got his confidence up because he started converting some third downs and they started sustaining some drives, and I think that's what they needed. They lacked so much rhythm the first 2 weeks. They did play the two best defenses in the NFL as well, and Steelers and Seahawks. So maybe I'm taking the Jets. I'm going to take them 27-20.
I think the Jets will probably cover. I think I'm going to have them 26-17. I didn't predict Rodgers coming out party last week. He still didn't he played well. But it wasn't like the Rodgers the 4 touchdown 300. I don't think he needs to do that anymore anyways. Yeah. But I'm not going to predict it this week, which but I think they just have enough talent that they're going to be able to move the ball pretty well. Of course, they beat them last year. They beat them with their ground game. The Jets did last year. Mm-hmm. So I guess this is a game that means something to Nathaniel Hackett. No, I think that Saleh will have something for Bo Nix. I think it'll be more like those first 2 games. Although Todd Bowles, you would think would have done the same thing last week, but that didn't happen. But yeah, I still think the Jets are just a better team. I think it'll be 26-17.
I think this game to me is more about the Jets being kind of coming into their own versus the Broncos reverting back to where they were week 1 and 2. But that being said, I think the Jets still win. Raiders Browns. Woof. Did we just decide there's a lot of bad AFC games this week?
Terrible.
I don't
like the 305 game.
I think this is like a 405. Yeah, for sure. This is a Sparrow Didis and Adam Archuleta are doing this game. I think it was at Sparrow last week. I think he kept saying Skylar Murray, apparently. That's what somebody was saying on. I can't remember what podcast was joking about.
Wait, why can't I find what station they're on? Here it is.
That's a CBS.
No, she's a great announcer, but Beth Mowins is doing.
Yeah, she used to do Big Ten games
on
ESPN. I remember
Purdue games.
The noon kickoff. We are live from Evanston. And
those games will be better than this one. Those
mid 2000s, it was always Purdue.
Yeah,
I remember I used to joke that Beth Mowins was the voice of Kyle Orton. Because it was just every damn Purdue game was on ESPN at, I guess, 12 Eastern, 11 a.m. Coming out of College Game Day, that's the game that.
When College Game Day would end, and you're all hyped, and they're going to West Lafayette.
Yeah. And then it's if you turn on to ESPN2, we got the Gophers at the Metrodome, and I'm like, whew.
When did the good games start?
Yeah, is that back then the Gophers, Minnesota used to play at the Metrodome.
That's right.
Yep. So this game, though, I think the Raiders acted like absolute clowns when they beat the Ravens, and they act like they won the Super Bowl in week 2, and them losing the way they did to Carolina was pretty funny, to be honest. They got their,
and I predicted that.
They got their butt kicked last week. That being said, this league, it's weird. I think the wheels fall off Cleveland this week. I'm out on Cleveland. Like, they're so horrible offensively. And with, I think, the Deshaun Watson experiment, I'm like 100% out now. I was like, I wasn't ever really in, but I was holding out like that 1%, like, oh, maybe he could get a little bit better. After last week, you lose at home to the Giants. And the Raiders are so poorly coached too, but I think they do. I think they respond well when things get bad. I'll take the Raiders here. I don't feel great about it. I'm gonna take the Raiders 24 to. I'll take them 23-19.
I'll take the Raiders 19-16.
Oh, so it's an ugly game. I think the offenses will start to get better as we get in the midseason. By the way, I think that'll start playing into. I think as we get more into the season, the scoring will go up. Interesting game. 2-1 Eagles, 2-1 Bucks. I guess this is a rematch of the wild card matchup back in January. Philly, I'm not a believer in. I think they're such frauds. Jalen Hurts has actually played like one of the league's worst quarterbacks, not named Bryce Young.
Yeah.
He's, I think, one of the lowest PFF graded quarterbacks on the year. And a lot of people don't like PFF grades, but like, I do take into account some of it because, like, for example, he got a really poor grade against Green Bay, and a lot of people like thought that was crazy because he had a good statistical game, but like in reality, if you watch that, it was really two broken plays where AJ Brown just took it to the house and Saquon made an amazing play, and that was it. I think Philly is going to hit a buzzsaw because I think Tampa, coming off a loss at home last week, I think Tampa is going to win this game. I'm going to say this is the game where the national media talks about a coach getting fired. I'm going to say 30-14 Buccaneers win big.
I think the Bucs win, but I think it's going to be something like 31-24. I think there'll only be a touchdown in it.
Mike Evans gets multiple touchdowns in this game.
I hope. I need him to start going off in my fantasy league.
I can feel it coming. This is the kind of game Mike Evans goes crazy in.
What was I about to say? Tampa statistically actually is kind of their record is
they got outplayed by Detroit.
They got outplayed by Detroit.
They didn't really they played kind of the bad Washington. Like, Washington did not play well in that first game.
Yes. So that's why I'm only taking them by a touchdown. I think maybe I overrated because of their win over Detroit on the road. I might have overrated Tampa Bay. I think they're still pretty decent, but I don't think they're as good maybe as their 3-1 record will state after this game. But, it's like we said, it's the time to stack the wins, and they are proven winners technically. So they probably will get it ironed out by the end of the year, but I think there's still some things that they need to figure out.
The way we talked about the Rams and the Bears game is very similar to how I talk about this Eagles-Bucs game. I think like the difference in coaching will just be so obvious.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And I think Baker Mayfield's playing a lot better than Jalen Hurts is.
Yes.
Think about it. Think about last week for a second with the Saints game. So the Eagles win a low-scoring 15-12 game. But take away the Dallas Goedert 50-yard catch to get him down in the red zone, which was kind of fluky because basically like two Saints defenders ran into each other trying to cover it. And the Saquon, and I want to say this, Saquon Barkley is one of the best players in the NFL right now. He is basically 1-2 games with the Eagles or the Packers game week 1, and then last week against New Orleans. Like, his explosive plays, like if you take those out, like the Eagles offense just did nothing all day. Like, they're not, I don't think they're a very good offensive team. Devonta Smith is probably out of this game. AJ Brown's probably out again. I don't know outside of Saquon how they're going to facilitate any offense.
Yeah.
And I think their defense is like one of those where I don't buy into them. I just think like if something breaks, like if there's any pressure put on them, they break. And I think this is the kind of game on the road against a team that's coming off a loss. I think it's just a recipe for a team to get killed. And that's why I'm going to take Tampa here. Next game, the Red Rifle revenge game.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
It came full circle.
Now, last week we said, oh, well, the Bengals, like, they're due for a win. Like, they're going to take care of the Commanders at home on Monday night. And they did not do that. No. They're 0-3.
Their defense is terrible. They don't have any pass rush whatsoever besides Hendrickson.
And even their offense, like, it relies so much on a big play to chase. Like, they don't, like, they're kind of the opposite of the way I look at the Falcons. Like, the Falcons are great at sustaining drives, but they have no big plays. The Bengals, it's like they don't sustain drives. They only get big plays.
Do you know, I do follow this one guy on Twitter. I forget his name. He has like this Bengals, like, it's like
Joe Goodberry?
Yes, him. I think he's very good. I like his stuff.
Yeah, he's a good analyst for the team, yeah.
He had an interesting point that he made on Tuesday, that the Bengals issues are so deep right now because of their organization's lack of commitment to their best players.
Their best players, yeah.
That I think they can't pay him. They won't pay him. So he was saying it's basically seeping through the organization. Like, you lost Jesse Bates, DJ Reader. Now Chase and Higgins are having this. It's kind of, I think they're at a moment.
It's bled into their culture.
It's bled into the culture right now. And this was a team that was like, talk about like high culture a couple years ago. Oh boy, the Sox are going to avoid the record-setting loss for the second night in a row.
What if they avoided it, period? They go on a run. They blew it.
They win 4 in a row. They actually would be winning 6 in a row. They've won 2 in a row, though.
But I think your point about the Bengals is very true, though, because it's like, I think the only thing that people make the case is like, well, they have Burrow. And that's great, but like they have this reputation, and some of it I think is justified in a way. Like, Mike Brown does not come, and it's almost very similar to the Bears. It's like they actually don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of cash flow.
Yeah, their teams are worth billions of dollars, but the only way that they realize that money is if they sold the team.
Yes,
right? It's not like Jerry Jones or Robert Kraft or some of these or especially like Kroenke, where like they have other businesses or have set up a cash flow rich type of situation where they can draw on that money to get guarantees in place for players like Chase, because that's what the players want. They want the guarantees. That's what gets them to sign the contracts. And rightfully so. They took care of Burrow. They got that set up, and that you had to do that. Mm-hmm. But like, the way the Higgins has really been, that situation has been going on for like 2 years. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Jesse Bates and DJ Reader. Like the more you talk about it, it's like, yeah, they have there's a lot of like kind of malcontents. I mean, the thing with Joe Mixon this summer.
Yes.
And then he went to the Texans. I think this is the type of team, like, it could break on them. And what's crazy to say this is, like, are we 2 years away from Joe Burrow trying to force his way out of Cincinnati? Just like Carson Palmer did.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing kind of falls apart. And then there's horrible culture all around. Everybody's unhappy. And it's the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
Going into this game, does Andy Dalton have 2 games of magic in a row? Because I think it's going to take that. I think the Bengals, as much as they are unhappy, I think they do win this game. I just don't see – I think the Panthers still have a lot of problems They beat a really bad team, I think, last week in the Raiders. I'm going to take Cincinnati here 24-10.
I think it's going to be closer. I think it's going to be 28-24 Cincinnati.
It's a game I don't feel great about this one. I think Cincinnati still has a better team. And they are desperate for a win.
Oh boy.
Ugh. I'll be quick about this. I'll give you Jacksonville. Right now, I think the worst team in the NFL is this team, is Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Because once Andy Dalton and the Panthers kind of got it back into a rhythm offensively, I think the Panthers played obviously much improved and they had a big win. This team, they make everything look hard. Everything. Like you watch the Jags, it's like what they asked Trevor, they make Shane Waldron and the Bears look smart. It's
hard to do.
I think they might have broken Lawrence. I think he looks like he has no confidence.
Yes,
it's so staggering. He has no confidence because if you go back I guess it was a knee injury or ankle injury last year on Monday Night Football. He was playing great football.
Yes, they were 8-3.
They were 8-3. He was he wasn't an MVP candidate, but he was playing really well. And that happened, and he has not been the same guy since. He's been, and I think the one game they won, I don't think he played in it. The Panther game, I don't think he started that game. So I think that was what's his face, CJ Beathard.
Yeah.
So we talk about coaches getting fired. I think it's between two guys. I think it's Nick Sirianni because of the pressure of that job, and his team I don't think is that great. And this guy should be. I think Doug Peterson, if they lose in a big fashion, which I think they're going to, I think Peterson should be fired. I think Houston, coming off a bad loss last week, I think they rebound. They're a way better coach team. They have more talent. I see the Texans are running away with this. Give me the Texans 31-17.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Jacksonville, and I think Tony Khan is, from what I hear, from what I've seen, not from people telling me, from what I've seen on Twitter, people are saying that for a very mild-mannered guy, he has
Shad Khan.
Shad Khan, sorry.
Yeah, Tony Khan is his son who runs the wrestling. AEW. He ain't mild-mannered.
Yes. No, he is not, and he has a neck injury from AEW.
Yeah. He's trying to be Vince McMahon, so he's the opposite of mild-mannered.
So, but from what I've heard, he's very upset right now. I think, and Jacksonville is not a team that's not afraid. They've done it many a time.
They've
fired a head coach, mid-season. But at the same time, I think Houston, their offense needs a little fine-tuning. They're not firing nearly on all cylinders as they should be. I think they win, but I think it's going to be something like 26-14, we'll say. They for a team that has as much talent on offense, they need to work on some things.
Yeah, they've not been all that great offensively. That is kind of one of the, I agree with you. It's one of the more underrated stories. I mean, if you look at the first few weeks, against the Bears, where they scored 19 in that game.
Yeah.
7 last week, and then they weren't all that awesome or explosive against the Colts.
No, they held the ball for 40 minutes, and they still only won by 2 in that game.
Yeah, so I think this needs to be the game. Jacksonville's not good defensively. This should be one of the locks of the week, I think, the way Jackson.
Yeah, if you're in a survivor pool, this would probably be the game I'd go with.
I mean, the way I look at it is if I'm Shad Khan, I almost be I'd almost want to fire. Let Peterson go out this week with CJ Beathard or whoever the backup quarterback is. Get crushed. Fire. The only reason they probably didn't fire Doug Peterson last week is because it was a short week.
Yeah.
I think mold prediction. I think this is the week.
They're going to London very soon. You don't want a new head coach. They might have to wait till after London. They're going to London in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that is true. But at the same time, is your season completely lost? Like,
Yeah, you don't wanna
because
wait
if
5,
if
6
you
weeks
let
of
it
the
go to
year.
London, you start 0-5, you're done.
Yeah.
Because at least if you get a new coach in there, like Lawrence, we know has talent. Like this, and that's the frustrating thing is like it's very similar to the Bears, where it's like
Yeah.
they constructed like a good. I like to compare it to like, uh, it's like the old Philly, like it's like the old Dream Team in 2011, where
Yeah.
like for the Philly, for the Eagles, where it was like Nandi Asamoah. They got all these big players to come in
Mhm.
via free. Jason Babin, like
Yeah.
guys that had career seasons like the year before in free agency, and they went
Mhm.
crazy. And then they all sucked.
Yeah.
And like Andy Reid is a much better coach than what, but like they still, it was a collection of players. But it's like, how are you going to use them? Like
Yeah,
Namdi
how do they
Asamoah,
melt together?
yeah, and it was basically like I think they had Namdi play like all zone coverage, and like
Mhm.
he was a lockdown man to man guy in
Yes.
Oakland. And Jacksonville feels the same way. It's like they have a collection of pieces, but like, how are you planning to use them? And like my whole thing with Gabe Davis is they sign him and then they go draft Brian Thomas. I'm like,
Yep.
well, why'd you sign Gabe Davis? Like, you need an ender. They miss Calvin Ridley in the sense that like Calvin Ridley was the kind of guy that you could like make Trevor Lawrence's life easier. Like every throw I watch this guy make, it's high degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like Travis Etienne. I don't think he's very good. So I every time I watch the guy run, I feel like he left something on the table. Uh, he's kind of like he's the DeAndre Swift of the AFC. Like there's so many examples of this
Yeah.
team resembling Chicago, but
And
they're
they
worse.
that they'll play each other in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that game is gonna be freaking awful. That's gonna
Yeah.
piss me off watching
That's
it.
the London game. That's a 9:30.
That's even worse. So we're gonna get up and watch that. Wow.
I know.
I mean, hopefully the Bears figure. I still have hope the Bears get it figured out, but like I don't think the Jags figure it out until Peterson's gone. I just hate that kind of offense in today's league too. The way everything's hard.
Mhm.
Like no, they don't use any motion. Like everything's static, and then it's just like, hey Trevor, go make a play. And I'm like, that's not how we play football in 2024. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We'll go quick on this game. Um, I think Jaden Daniels, if Malik Neighbors is not the rookie of the year, it's probably been Jaden Daniels so far. He's been really good. Uh, I think he's playing his lookalike this week in
Yeah.
Kyler Murray. Uh, that being said, I think the Cardinals have actually played really well. I thought they played Detroit. Like, I think they might have even like close. I think they played Detroit about as good as they can.
Yeah.
I think that was a good loss for them. The Cardinals had a lot of good losses the last 2 years, though. That being said, I take them in a big win here, 31-17.
Um, I I think the Cardinals win, but I think it's going to be very close, and I think it's gonna be pretty high scoring.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be Cardinals 34-31.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the thing about Washington, um, they finally started to find the end zone the other night. Like that was the thing with them against the Giants. Remember we talked, they were in the red zone like 6 times. They came
Yep.
away with 7 field goals. Um,
They won the game.
they won the game. On Monday night, they finally started to find the end zone. I think
Yeah.
that's going to keep going for them. Their defense is still terrible. Um,
I will say this, though. I think
either
Dan Quinn has done an amazing job, with
oh,
this
in
team.
terms of yes, in general, he has,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't think the roster's all that great, which you can't
Austin
expect
Eckler,
much.
has had like a revitalization.
He's out this week, though, because
Oh, he
he's in
is.
concussion protocol, and he had to
Well,
go
then I'll
back.
take the Cardinals 34 nothing.
Yeah. Nah. But I'll give credit to Dan Quinn. I think he's done a really good job. But I think Arizona, in a lot of ways, like Arizona feels like it's just a year ahead of Washington. I
Yeah,
think they're
that's a
turning
good
a
way to
corner.
put it.
Their defense impressed me more than their offense did last week. I think they held Detroit in check, even though Detroit dominated time of possession. Uh, I think Arizona wins this game. They and it's a must win for Arizona because this is their third home game in the first 4 weeks. They got to have
Yeah.
this. They need to be at least 2-2 in their first 4. 10 years ago, this is an amazing matchup, but maybe not anymore because the Patriots.
Remember the 2012 Sunday night game?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. It's like
Yeah,
that was an amazing game.
that was awesome.
Um, I think San Francisco gets it back together this week.
Yeah.
And I think we saw the real Patriots on Thursday night last week. Like, their offense was unwatchable.
Mhm.
Uh, biggest I'm gonna go San Francisco 38-10. Big
Yeah.
win for the 49ers.
It's mine is gonna be very close to that. I think it's gonna be 35-7
Yeah.
49ers. It's
I
yeah.
I think the
God bless
49ers,
the Patriots.
they're here to make a statement, I think. After 2 straight losses, I think they're looking to reestablish themselves. And they should have won that Rams game. Like,
Yes.
I can't believe they lost it. Next game, if I can get it to click. Whoops. There. Chiefs Chargers. If Herbert doesn't play, which I don't think he will, I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another ugly win. I think it's going to be 24-7. If Herbert's out, if Herbert's in, give me Chiefs 24-17.
Yeah, I'll take the Chiefs. I'll say 27-16, which is probably very close to you. No, that was the kind of the funny part where I was saying earlier that I don't think we'll talk about the Chiefs till January. They haven't looked good.
Just going to stack wins.
But it doesn't really matter because they're still going to be there in the end. We thought they were in trouble last year.
Dude, they weren't good last year, and they won the damn Super Bowl.
Yeah, so
like, we
really
talked you and I talked so much. It's like, yeah, the Chiefs, it's just they're not good.
Yes, yeah.
And then we wake up Super Bowl Sunday morning and like, oh yeah, they're probably gonna win, aren't they?
They're there again.
Yeah.
So,
And they did.
Yeah.
Like, even in the fourth quarter, yeah, they got this.
Yeah,
no problem.
They figured it out. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the Chiefs win this. I will be curious to see how the Chargers respond, and how, like, I think Harbaugh will make this as tough as possible. But I think there's just going to be such a gap between. Is it Taylor Heineke that's the backup, or Easton Stick?
Easton Stick.
Yeah. So I think Easton Stick is the backup. I think there's just such a huge gap between the two. I'm gonna take the Chiefs here. Between him, their backup and Mahomes. Best game of the weekend, I would say, is this one. The Ravens, I think we saw that game. You're like, that's the team we thought they were. And the more I thought about the Ravens, like 0-2 start, but they're 2 inches from 2 inches and basically like a couple miscues on offense, being 3-0. Dominant win against Dallas. The Raiders game is that's going to be one of those games. Bill Simmons mentioned this on the pod that I listened to. It's like, that's going to be a what the F game. Like, you're going to look back and be like, they lost to the Raiders and at home? Like, how? And I think the Ravens win this game. I think this will be like the Josh Allen throws 3 interception kind of game, and we're all like, "Oh, come on, you gave him the win."
Yeah, Josh throws 3 50-yard interceptions.
Yeah, so it and he gets frustrated, and then people were like, "Oh, he talked trash about Stephon Diggs last week." Da, 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 da. Like, I think the Bills are for real. They're a very well coached team, but I think the Ravens make a statement. Close game here, 31-27, taking the Ravens in a high scoring game.
Yeah, it's funny, the Ravens, by like most like standard statistical numbers, you'd say that their defense isn't playing well, but by DVOA, they're actually still the 10th best team on defense.
Played pretty well last week.
They played pretty well last week.
I mean, Dallas kind of came back at the end, but they just dominated them for the first 3 quarters of the game. So
Buffalo has been on cruise control really the last couple weeks. I think this is going to be kind of a punch in the mouth game myself.
Yeah.
As you do too. So I'm going to take Baltimore. I think this will be a little bit lower scoring because I just think it's going to be kind of like one of those heavyweight battle kind of punches or games,
Yeah.
I should say. I'm going to take Baltimore 20-17. I think, their special teams actually is what really needs to kind of kick into gear here for
Are
them.
the Bills going to be able to run the ball on Baltimore like they were able to against Miami and Jacksonville? I don't think they will be. And I think they're going to score a lot of points because I think Josh Allen's still a playmaker and they're going to put up points.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to be the game where like the Bills they don't like playing these they don't like playing these kind of games where they're pass happy. I think the way McDermott actually wants to play is kind of how they did against Jacksonville. It's like they move the ball at will, they push the other team over, and then Josh Allen in the red zone is like dynamite. But they avoid mistakes, and then they win the game in the first 3 quarters. Like the fourth quarter is just like mop up duty.
Yes,
I think that's the way he wants to play. I don't think they're going to be able to do that against Baltimore. I think
Trubisky was in the last 2 games for the Bills.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to go back to the air, and I don't think that's the way they want to play football. But Josh Allen is so good. I think he's still going to keep them in the game, even if he makes a couple of mistakes like I predicted. He's still such a dynamic playmaker. I'm so excited to watch this game.
Yeah, this will be a good one.
Yeah. Last game on the slate, I believe, or there's 2 Monday night games.
There's 2 Monday night games.
2 Monday night games. We'll keep this one.
This was one of the Monday night games during the doubleheader last year too.
They're just flipped now because Miami is playing at Tennessee.
Miami was
Yep. I think that there's one thing to really factor into this. Don't give the game up. Will Levis, just don't give it up. Like if Will Levis doesn't give Miami the game, Tennessee wins 20-14. That's my take. The other thing is I don't think outside of Achane, I think that's the only way they'd be able to move the ball because I don't think Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle are good enough to get the ball downfield to Waddle or Hill.
That's such a weird quarterback wide receiver combination. They're like, I don't think Cade McNown can get the ball to Jerry Rice. It's just not going to work.
So that's if I'm McDaniel, and what kind of surprised me is like I don't think he did a very good job. It's like, why didn't Tyreek Hill get the ball more like out of the backfield?
Yeah.
I mean, they did it with Achane. Like they got to figure out a way to get those 3 guys the ball. That's their offense. Like it was with Tua, but like Tua at least could throw it 5-10 yards downfield. Like Tim Boyle and Skylar Thompson couldn't do that. I also think if you look, we are not talking enough about the malpractice of Chris Grier.
Yeah.
The GM of the Dolphins. It's like Tua's concussion history is pretty well known at this point. I mean, it's been 2 years since where he had to miss like the last month.
Trade for Bryce Young.
You could, but what I'm saying is like, you didn't think to like maybe, hey, let's call a veteran.
Yeah.
Or
have one already on.
Get somebody have somebody competent.
Yes.
Ready to go in the event that this happens. Because like when you watch Skylar Thompson, like the guy cannot play. And I know Tim Boyle, he might be great in the meeting room. We've seen him on the field. He cannot play. Like, remember that game? Was it back in 21 where he started against the Steelers for the Lions? And I want to say, like, let me look. I got to look at this game now. 2021.
I remember when the Bears put him in against the Vikings in the 3-14 season. And they specifically put him in because I think Nathan Peterman led like a touchdown drive. So they put Tim Boyle in just randomly, and he threw an interception to the Vikings. And everybody was like there was people like, put the Bears on call for tanking. This is so obvious. I mean, it was clear.
Fun fact with Tim Boyle, by the way, let me give you his college stats.
1 touchdown and 13 picks, right?
Yeah. Like I remember reading that and I'm like, how in the world did he make it to the NFL? Like, he literally, like,
that would be like failing every business class and then getting a job on Wall Street.
He backed up Aaron Rodgers for like 5 years. It's like, that's where, like, people that analyze the draft, it's like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When I guess this probably was Ted Thompson, because his final season was 2015 in college. So Ted Thompson and some scout with the Packers went like, this guy can play. And his stat line, his final season, he never had a season above 133 attempts at Connecticut. That was his freshman season. His stat line that year was no touchdowns, 8 picks, 44.4 completion percentage.
Oh, Jesus.
And let me try. I'm trying to pull up his Tim Boyle 2021 game log. But like, this is the guy that the Titans are like, or the Dolphins are going to throw out.
Yeah, he's still around in the league.
Yeah, let me see here. 2024. I know this is really bad radio, so my apologies. But I remember vividly, like, he played in a game that season. He actually wasn't that bad. Okay, against Cleveland, I think this was with Detroit back in 2021. They played at Cleveland, and he had 77 yards passing. So, and on 23 attempts. So, yeah, he was really bad. But my point is, like, neither one of these guys are it. It doesn't matter who they have offensively, whether it's Achane, Hill, Waddle. They can't throw it downfield. Titans are going to win this by default. The Dolphins might be one of the worst teams in the NFL until they get a quarterback back. Their defense isn't good either.
No.
So, just organizational malpractice to not have a capable backup. And did you have a score for this?
Yeah, I saw 24-20 Titans.
24-20. Okay. Last game.
I really don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Lions Seahawks. So, I've not been that impressed by Detroit. It's really not. I think Detroit's coaching and the roster are pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Jared Goff has not been great. I think he has regressed from last year, where he was pretty damn good. But which is classic Jared Goff. Like, if it's an even year, he's not good. If it's an odd year, he's probably pretty solid.
Usually when he gets paid is when he sucks.
There is kind of like a correlation. Like, the guy is very inconsistent. Like,
yeah,
every other year is really bad. But right now, PFF has him the 31st graded quarterback through 3 games. He's not playing good. He's really not. I think they're fortunate to have the running attack that they have, and their defense has been outstanding.
Yeah, their defense has finally come into. If they had this defense last year, they might have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And it seems like they've been drafting really well. Brad Holmes has assembled a great roster. And we talked really highly about Detroit during the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we don't like them, they are really good. I think this is such a tough game to gauge because I don't know enough about the Seahawks based off of who they've played so far. That being said, I like the playmaker aspect of the Seahawks in a game like this, where I think it comes down to like an explosive play. And in big games like this, I just want to bet on DK Metcalf doing something big. And that being the main difference in the game. And I think right now, Geno Smith's a better quarterback. That's the other thing. And Seattle's at home. Give me the Seahawks 27, or I keep doing 27. Give me the Seahawks 28-24 on Monday night.
I think because it's at home, I think the Lions are going to eke it out. I think it's going to be 24-23. I think Mike McDonald is going to have Jared Goff kind of wrapped up pretty well. But I think the Lions probably just have enough to overcome Seattle. They should not just have enough. They are a better team, but I think that on Monday night it's going to be a tougher battle than they probably were expecting a few weeks ago. So
yeah,
Detroit in a 1 point.
The winner of the Green Bay Minnesota game will be watching this with great interest, and there could be a scenario where, if the Rams lose and the Cardinals lose, the Seahawks win, like we might have a team buried from the NFC South, or two teams buried in the NFC South pretty early in the season.
Possible.
Well, with that, we're gonna take off. Any last thoughts before we head out?
No.
Well, that's it.